She left me the same week I lost my job, like my worth had vanished with my paycheck. No fight, no warning. Just a note on the counter and a closet half empty by morning. "I need space," was all she wrote. I remember standing in that kitchen, holding that note like it was a diagnosis. She didn't even say goodbye in person. Maybe because she didn't think I was worth looking in the eye anymore. 3 years together, and suddenly I was a burden. I'd given her everything. My time, my heart, my plans for the future. But when things got hard, she vanished like I was a risk she couldn't afford to take. I sat in that apartment for days after, jobless, alone, replaying every moment, every conversation, trying to figure out when she stopped seeing me as a man and started seeing me as dead weight. She never answered my texts, not even a "how are you?" Turns out, forever has a pretty short expiration date when your bank account dries up. But life doesn't end when someone leaves. It just gets quieter. And sometimes in the silence, you start building again, brick by broken brick. It was Kellen who pulled me out of the hole. My old friend turned business founder. He gave me a seat at a folding table in a rented office and said, "You're not done. Let's prove it." I threw myself into that work like my life depended on it, because it did. I rebuilt. I learned. I rose. And then, months later, as I sat across from another job applicant during interviews, I flipped to the next resume and felt the world tilt beneath me. Her name was on it. Alina. The same woman who left me when I had nothing was now sitting across from me, applying for a job at the company I helped build, wearing practiced humility and just enough perfume to pretend nothing happened. She didn't recognize me right away, but I didn't flinch when she finally did. I looked her in the eye. "Alina," I said, "we'll begin the interview now." And just like that, the power shifted. This time, I wasn't the one being left behind. This time, I was the one with the decision to make, and trust me, I remembered everything. My name is Camden Hale, and I used to believe that loyalty was enough to hold two people together. That if you showed up every day, loved deeply, and sacrificed where it counted, the person beside you would stay when things got hard. I believed that because that's what I did for Alina. We met during one of those weird, forgettable networking events. I was there out of obligation, young, ambitious, still trying to figure out how to be someone in a room full of people pretending they already were. She was standing by the wine table, uninterested in the chatter around her, thumbing through her phone like she couldn't wait to leave. I walked up and said, "You look like you're plotting your escape." She glanced up, slightly amused. "You caught me." We talked for 20 minutes that night, then 2 hours. Then we were the last ones left, sipping warm drinks from paper cups in a parking lot that had emptied hours ago. I didn't believe in fate. Still don't. But I knew something had shifted that night, and when we started dating, it was easy. Alina was smart, quick-witted, and impossibly composed. She was the kind of woman who always looked like she had somewhere better to be. And yet, when she chose to be with you, it felt like the whole world slowed down. She made me laugh when I needed it and challenged me when I got too comfortable. For a while, she made me feel invincible. We moved in together just after our second anniversary, a modest apartment with uneven floors and leaky pipes, but it was ours. We spent Sundays grocery shopping and dancing in the kitchen to bad playlists. On rainy days, she'd read out loud while I worked. On the hard days, we stayed up talking until the sun came up. She didn't care about money, or so I thought. Back then, I was working as a product lead at a mid-sized tech firm. Not flashy, but solid. I paid my bills, I saved, I planned. She worked. In design, freelance mostly, and I supported that. I carried more of the financial load, but I never saw it as unfair. That's what love meant to me. You carry each other when one's tired. That's what we did, until the company folded. It wasn't my fault. Everyone was blindsided. I got called into the office one Thursday, and by noon, I was packing up a cardboard box of belongings while HR handed me a severance envelope and avoided eye contact. Just like that, I went from team leader to unemployed. When I told Alina that night, she didn't cry. She didn't say we'd figure it out. She didn't even hug me. She just stared for a moment, then said, "So, what are you going to do now?" That question shouldn't have hurt, but it did, because behind it wasn't concern, it was calculation. Over the next few days, something between us cracked. She got quieter, less patient. She stopped talking about future plans. She started coming home later. She said she needed to think, and that maybe some space would help. I remember asking her if she still believed in us. She looked at me with that same calm, unreadable face and said, "I believe in stability." 2 days later, she left. No fight, no screaming, just packed a bag, left her key on the counter, and sent me a text saying, "I hope you understand. I didn't." I tried to tell myself it wasn't personal, that maybe she was scared, maybe she didn't know how to deal with struggle. But no matter how many ways I tried to explain it to myself, the reality didn't change. She left because I was no longer useful. She left because I wasn't winning anymore. That realization cut deeper than I expected, because it meant all those quiet moments we shared, those nights of whispered dreams and soft laughter, weren't strong enough to anchor her to me when the tide got rough. It meant that what we had wasn't real to her, and the worst part? I didn't even get closure. She didn't come back. She didn't check in. She moved on like we were nothing more than a chapter she didn't feel like finishing. I spent weeks in that apartment, surrounded by her empty space, her shampoo still in the shower, her perfume still lingering on the closet air. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat much. I'd stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering if she ever thought about me, if she regretted anything, if she felt even half the weight I carried alone. I stopped asking those questions after a while, because the answers wouldn't change anything. What saved me wasn't healing, it was action. Kellen, an old friend and colleague, heard I'd been laid off and offered me a spot in his new firm. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't steady, but it was something, and that something was enough to rebuild from. The grief didn't vanish, but it got quieter. The apartment still echoed, but the silence stopped hurting. Slowly, I began to replace the pain with progress. I didn't post about it. I didn't try to win her back. I just worked, because I didn't want to prove Alina wrong anymore. I wanted to prove to myself that I never needed her to begin with. And just when I started to find peace in that truth, she walked into my office, resume in hand, asking for a job. Didn't plan on interviewing her. HR had set up the schedule, and I'd been running through candidates all week, resumes blurring together, the same stiff smiles, the same recycled answers. I didn't even recognize the name when I skimmed the next file. But when she walked into the room and our eyes met, time stopped. Alina. Hair pulled back, neutral-toned blazer. That familiar calm composure. Except now, it looked forced. I could see the hesitation in the corners of her mouth, the way she gripped her portfolio too tightly. She wasn't expecting me either. That much was obvious. "Camden?" she said softly, voice caught between surprise and discomfort. I didn't move, didn't blink. "Have a seat." She hesitated, then slowly sat down across from me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. I opened the file and read her name aloud, not because I needed to, but because I wanted her to hear it from me. Her face tightened slightly. I kept my tone flat, professional. "Walk me through your recent experience," I said, and just like that, the interview began. She spoke clearly, cautiously, careful to keep her voice even. She listed her projects, her freelance work, the companies she'd consulted with. She never mentioned the gaps, the months missing from her timeline, the ones I knew came right after she walked out of my life. I nodded through her answers, but I wasn't really listening. My mind kept drifting. I remembered the way she used to sit across from me at the breakfast table, curled up in my hoodie, eating toast with a pencil tucked behind her ear. Now she was polished, distant, practicing, her answers like they could cover up everything she didn't say. When it was over, I stood and thanked her like she was any other candidate. She stood, hesitated, then asked quietly, "Do you make the hiring decisions here?" "I run this department," I said. "So yes." Her eyes searched mine. Will that be a problem? No, I replied evenly. As long as you're not one. She gave a small nod. Thank you for the opportunity. And then she walked out of the room, just like she did the first time, only this time, I wasn't the one left behind. Later that afternoon, Kellen walked into my office. He tossed Alina's resume on my desk and raised an eyebrow. Didn't expect that, he said. Neither did I. She's good, he continued. Honestly, better than most of the people we've seen this week. What do you want to do? I stared at the folder. I could have said no. I could have explained everything, but something stopped me. Offer her the position. Kellen blinked. You serious? She's qualified, I said. That's all. That matters. He didn't question it again. That was one thing about Kellen. He trusted me to handle my own demons. When Alina walked into the office on her first day, the shift in her expression was unmistakable. Seeing me there, not just sitting behind a desk but leading the floor, commanding the room, caught her off guard. She tried to hide it behind a polite smile, but I saw through it. I didn't welcome her with warmth. I didn't remind her of who I used to be. I simply showed her who I was now. We kept it professional. I assigned her projects. She delivered. I gave her feedback. She took it. But underneath it all, there was a tension neither of us acknowledged. It hummed through every interaction, every hallway pass, every accidental eye contact across the conference room, and then came the email. Late one night, I was reviewing client reports when a forwarded message landed in my inbox. An internal request chain I wasn't supposed to be on. The original sender, Alina, her message. A quiet complaint about how communication with leadership felt cold and unclear. She didn't name me directly, but I knew what she meant. It wasn't just a critique. It was subtle, careful, calculated, a way to paint me as detached, distant. The irony burned. She'd walked out on me when I had nothing, and now called me cold for not handing her my warmth like nothing had happened. The next morning, I called her into my office. She looked nervous as she stepped in. I didn't waste time. I saw the message you forwarded, I said calmly. Her eyes widened just a fraction. That wasn't meant for you, I figured. Silence. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, she said. I just think some of the processes here feel closed off. Closed off, I repeated. Or just not revolving around you? She blinked. That's not what I meant. You don't get to play the victim here, Alina, I said, my voice low but firm. Not after how you left, not after how you looked at me like I was dead weight the second I fell. She froze. I gave everything I had to that relationship, I continued. And when it got hard, you didn't just walk. You vanished. No explanation. No closure. Just gone. And now you want what? Forgiveness? Familiarity? Her hands trembled, slightly, but she straightened her shoulders. I made a mistake, Camden. I thought we were going to sink. You thought I was going to sink, I corrected. And you didn't want to be tied to someone drowning. The room felt heavier by the second. I didn't come here to cause problems, she whispered. I just needed a job. You got one, I said. So do it. She stood there, silent, wounded, but I didn't feel guilt, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries, about survival, about showing her and myself that the man she left behind was gone. And the man in front of her now? He wasn't going to let her rewrite the story. The days that followed were heavy, even if I never showed it. On the surface, I was fine, focused, professional. I held every meeting with a straight face, met every deadline, and delivered every strategy without a crack in my voice. But inside, something twisted every time I saw her across the office. Something that didn't have a name. I told myself it didn't matter. That she was just another employee. That I'd moved on. But emotions don't respect logic. They bleed through the cracks, no matter how tightly you seal them. Every time I passed Alina in the hallway, I could feel it again. That memory of her, standing in the doorway with her bags packed, not even looking back. I could still hear the hollow silence that followed her exit. Still remember how the air felt colder in that apartment the moment she left. I hated that my body still remembered her like that. Hated how familiar her presence still felt. I didn't want that. I didn't want any of it. But grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, lingering, embedded in the way your hands shake when you think no one's looking. There were nights I stayed later than everyone else just to avoid her. Not because I couldn't handle seeing her. I could. I had. But because it stirred something I didn't know how to process. Rage and ache in equal measure. And more than anything else, suspense. I didn't know what she wanted. She was professional, polite, even soft-spoken most days. But there was something behind her eyes. Something she wasn't saying. A hesitance, a regret, or maybe just guilt, sitting heavy on her chest like it used to sit on mine. One evening, I saw her standing alone at the end of the hallway, staring out the window with her arms folded. She didn't notice me, but I noticed the tension in her shoulders, the quiet in her eyes. She looked like someone trying to hold it all together, and for a split second, something in me softened. Then I remembered who she'd been when it counted. I remembered the silence, the abandonment, the clean break she made while I was still on my knees. That softness hardened again. I kept walking. At home, I didn't talk about her. Not to Kellen, not to anyone. I buried it beneath work, beneath responsibilities. But every so often, it crept back in when I saw a hoodie she used to wear folded in the closet, when I ordered takeout from the Thai place she used to love, when Will, my younger brother, asked casually, "Whatever happened to that girl you were with?" I'd shrug. She's gone. But she wasn't. She was right here, every day, breathing the same air, making coffee in the same office kitchen. There were moments she tried to talk, small questions, casual comments. I kept it short. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what she was hoping for. Redemption? Friendship? A second chance? None of those were on the table. And yet, I couldn't stop watching her sometimes. Not in the way I used to, with warmth or admiration, but with questions. What had she been through since she left? Had she regretted it at all? Was she still the same person who chose security over love, or had she changed? That thought scared me more than anything. Because if she had changed, what did that mean for me? Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? It became a quiet war inside me. One I fought while typing reports and managing teams and eating lunch at my desk like nothing was wrong. On the outside, I was composed, driven, in control. But inside, I was spiraling in silence, trying to figure out why the woman who walked away still had this hold on my thoughts, trying to figure out what was worse, her presence now, or the absence she left behind before. Some nights, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling in my new place. Bigger, cleaner, quieter, built without her. And still, I'd hear echoes, not of her voice, but of the person I used to be when I loved her. That was the cruelest part. The memories weren't even about her anymore. They were about me. About the version of myself that believed in forever. The version that thought love meant choosing someone even when life got ugly. The version she left behind the moment things turned hard. And now? Now she walked my halls like she never shattered me, and I was the one who had to pretend I didn't notice. The emotional weight didn't break me, but it bent something inside me, twisted it, made me look at her and wonder, was I still angry? Or just exhausted? I didn't have the answer. But I knew this. Something had to give. This tension couldn't last forever. Because no matter how tightly I controlled my face, my voice, my words, there was one thing I couldn't hide. I still hadn't decided what hurt more, that she left me when I needed her, or that she was back now, acting like none of it ever happened. The second twist didn't come in a storm. It came quietly, like everything else between us. A single moment that cracked everything I'd carefully built to keep her at arm's length. It started with a client meeting. We were pitching to a major fintech group, one that could double our Q3 projections if we closed the deal. I'd prepped for weeks, late nights, endless strategy decks, refining every detail, and I'd assigned Alina a support role. Nothing front-facing, just back-end logistics and presentation flow. But 5 minutes before the pitch, one of our junior analysts panicked. Laptop crash, backups failed, half the visual aids were gone, including the demo build I'd spent 2 sleepless nights overseeing. I was already in the conference room, mid-introduction, when Kellen buzzed my phone from the hallway. We're screwed unless we stall. Before I could respond, the door opened, and in walked Alina, calm as ever, holding a tablet and a flash drive. She glanced at me for only a second before walking over to the projector, plugging it in without a word, and loading a clean, fully revised version of our presentation. I didn't ask how she had it. I didn't need to. She'd rebuilt it. By memory. The demo played smoothly. The pitch landed. The clients leaned forward, took notes, asked follow-ups, and when we walked out, they said, "You've got a strong team." I nodded once, then watched as Alina walked back to her desk, expression unreadable. That should have been the moment things started to heal, but it wasn't. It only made everything harder. Because that night, as I sat at my desk going through post-meeting notes, I opened a file Alina had left behind. A stray doc on the shared drive, unlabeled, buried between presentation drafts. I opened it out of habit. What I found wasn't client notes. It was a personal letter, addressed to me, Camden. I wasn't going to send this. I'm still not sure you'll ever see it. But there are things I never said. Things I owe you, even if you don't want them anymore. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I didn't think I deserved you once you fell. You were always the strong one, the one who held everything together. When you lost your job, I felt powerless. And instead of standing beside you, I let my fear win. I see you now. I see what you've built. And I hate that I wasn't there to help build it. You don't owe me anything. But I needed you to know. I never stopped believing in who you were. I just stopped believing in myself. I stared at the screen for a long time. Because for the first time, I saw something other than silence behind her leaving. I saw shame. I saw guilt. I saw a version of Alina who hadn't walked away because I wasn't enough, but because she didn't feel she was, and I didn't know what to do with that, because suddenly the lines weren't clean anymore. The villain I'd painted in my head, the one I'd used as fuel to climb out of the mess, wasn't a villain at all. She was just as lost as I'd been. And now? Now she was trying to come back. Not to be forgiven, but to be understood. That was the twist I hadn't seen coming. Not a betrayal, not a lie, but the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was more to the story than I wanted to believe. The confrontation wasn't planned. It never is. It came after a long day, the kind that drags on you in places you didn't know could ache. The team had hit a major milestone, and Kellen had ordered dinner for everyone to celebrate. Laughter echoed through the office, wine glasses clinked, and stories spilled out from cubicles like warm light. I should have felt proud, but I kept catching her eyes on me. Alina. She sat across the room, half listening to a conversation, but her gaze drifted toward me more than once. And I was tired of pretending I didn't notice. Tired of pretending her presence didn't dig up everything I'd buried. So when the room thinned out and the air finally calmed, I stepped outside to clear my head. The city buzzed below the balcony. Cold wind, faint honks in the distance. That quiet hum that only cities have once everyone's asleep but the lights stay on, and then the door clicked open behind me. I didn't need to turn to know it was her. She stepped beside me, close enough that I could feel the tension wrapped in her silence. "I didn't mean for that file to be seen," she said softly. "The letter," I figured. A pause. I meant every word. I stared out at the skyline. "Why didn't you just say it to my face?" She let out a quiet breath. Because you look at me like you've already decided what I am. And maybe I deserve that. I turned to face her. You think this is about judgment? She didn't answer. I don't look at you that way because I hate you, Alina. I look at you that way because I don't know what's real anymore. You were supposed to be my partner, my anchor. And the moment the water got rough, you cut the rope. Her face tightened. You left, I said. Not during a fight, not after betrayal. You left when I needed help, when I needed someone to believe in me even when I didn't. I know. You don't. You don't know what it was like waking up in that apartment, checking my phone every 5 minutes for a message that never came. You don't know how small everything felt, how heavy. You weren't there for any of it. And now, you're just back. She blinked rapidly, eyes glassy. You think I didn't suffer? No, I said. I think you ran before you had to. Silence again. Then she spoke, her voice shaking. I left because I didn't know how to be strong for you. You were always the one who had it figured out, Camden. And when I saw you fall, I panicked. I didn't know how to hold the weight of both of us. I thought I'd make it worse. I thought you'd hate me for staying and not being enough. You know what's worse than not being enough? I said quietly. Not trying. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she brushed it away quickly. You're right. I shook my head. It's not about being right. It's about the damage done. You didn't just leave me. You left the version of us that we built together. And now you're here, in my space, in my company. And I don't know what you want from me. I don't want anything, she whispered. I just wanted to be near the only version of myself I ever liked. That hit harder than I expected. We stood there in silence, the cold air pressing between us. I see you now, she said after a moment. Really see you. You didn't just rebuild your life. You built something better. You became someone I didn't believe you could be. And I hate that I ever doubted it. I looked away. Do you want me to say I forgive you? She hesitated. I want you to tell me the truth. So I did. The truth is, I don't know if I hate you or if I'm still hurt. I don't know if I want you gone or if I just want the version of us that never fell apart. But that version doesn't exist anymore, and neither do we. Her shoulders sagged, like the last bit of hope inside her had finally given out. I understand, she said quietly. I really do. I nodded once. Thank you for the work you've done, but I think it's time we made a change. Her head snapped up. You're letting me go? No, I said. I'm transferring you to another department, one where we don't have to orbit each other like this. It's not punishment. It's space. She nodded slowly, accepting it. Good night, Alina. I turned to leave, but she stopped me with one last sentence. I never stopped loving you. I paused, but I didn't look back, because love, when left unattended too long, grows wild, tangled, unrecognizable. And some things once broken don't belong in the same hands again. I walked back into the building, my chest tight but my head clear. That was the climax. Not the tears, not the silence. But the moment I finally said goodbye without needing her to hear it, she had her closure now, and so did I. 3 weeks after our conversation on the balcony, Alina transferred departments. I wasn't dramatic. No scene, no bitterness. Just a quiet shift in her desk assignment and a polite goodbye email that said, wishing everyone the best. But even in its silence, the message echoed. Because people noticed. They always do when tension exits a room and the air finally clears. Kellen didn't ask questions. He trusted me. And I didn't offer explanations. I was done retelling stories that no longer deserved oxygen. Alina became a memory the moment she stepped out of my department. One I'd finally stopped trying to rewrite, but that wasn't the end. The real end came weeks later, wrapped in a file folder and a name I hadn't thought about in months. Zariah. She was listed as the new creative consultant for one of our premium Clients, a high-end interior firm that had recently partnered with our cybersecurity division after a breach. Her portfolio was clean, polished, impressive, but her last name, it matched Alina's, sister. I hadn't seen Zariah since a holiday dinner years ago. Back then, she was the sarcastic little sibling who rolled her eyes at everything and constantly poked fun at our couple photos. We'd never been close, but we weren't enemies, until now. The first time I saw her in our office, she gave me a slow, knowing smile. "Camden Hale," she said, adjusting her designer sunglasses as she walked into the lobby like she owned the place. "Haven't seen you since the days my sister thought you walked on water." I raised an eyebrow. "Welcome aboard," she smirked. "Oh, I'm not here to make peace." "I didn't think you were." Zariah wasn't like Alina. She didn't apologize. She didn't hold her guilt in trembling hands. She was sharp, unapologetic, and dangerous in a way most people wouldn't recognize until it was too late. And yet she was brilliant. Her ideas were stunning. Her pitches, flawless. Clients loved her. And I hated that I admired her professionalism. Until I learned the truth. Zariah wasn't just freelancing. She wasn't just consulting. She was building something behind the scenes. Something Alina was quietly funding, a startup, their startup. Using inside information, Zariah was collecting from our firm under the guise of creative collaboration. They were trying to poach our biggest client, and they were close to succeeding. The betrayal stung. Not because it was shocking, but because it was so predictable. I'd given Alina space, dignity, and a clean break. I'd walked away without public resentment, without using my position to retaliate. But they mistook grace for weakness, and that was their mistake. Because I wasn't the man they remembered. I didn't explode. I didn't send warnings or threats. Gathered evidence. I watched the transaction logs. I traced the conversations. I documented email patterns, VPN reroutes, project overlaps. My cybersecurity training wasn't just theoretical. I built the company's firewall, literally and figuratively. And I knew exactly how to monitor internal leaks without tripping alarms. Within 10 days, I had everything I needed. I scheduled a meeting with legal and executive leadership. 10 minutes into the presentation, their faces turned to stone. Within 24 hours, we severed ties with the client, quietly, respectfully, before Zariah and Alina could twist the narrative. We issued a compliance report to cover the transition, then informed all partner companies of a major internal breach attempt that had been neutralized. Zariah's firm never saw it coming. Their deal collapsed. Funding fell through. Reputation. Tarnished before the first campaign could launch, Alina tried to call. I blocked the number. Zariah sent an email claiming I'd overstepped. I sent back a single sentence. "Next time, build something honest." It wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth, about consequences. They didn't just lose a client. They lost the illusion that they could play chess with someone who'd already built the board. The storm didn't end there. Word spread. Fast. And when I was invited to speak at a cybersecurity panel weeks later, I ended with a story. Not naming. Names, of course. But illustrating how personal betrayal can become a professional liability if you don't learn where your loyalty lives. The audience applauded. Some of them might have known. Most didn't. But Alina would. Because I knew she was watching. She'd always wanted validation from the world. And I had it now. But even with all that behind me, the final piece of closure came quietly, late one evening when I returned home. The apartment was quiet, clean. Will, my younger brother, was visiting for dinner. Kellen had sent a bottle of vintage wine to celebrate the new contract we closed that day, our biggest yet. I poured a glass, sat by the window, and looked out over the city I used to feel invisible in. And I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped needing to. I thought about the man I used to be. The one standing in the apartment after Alina left, heart cracked, hands empty, unsure of what came next. And I wanted to reach back in time. To tell him, you will rise, you will build, you will not just recover, you will own the life they thought you couldn't live without them. And when they come back, because they always come back, you won't need closure from their mouths, because you already found it in your silence. This wasn't just revenge. This was evolution. And the final chapter? It wasn't her story anymore. It was mine. And I ended it exactly where it deserved to end, without her.